If you are into designer handbags or beautiful things, you will find yourself researching about how to start a luxury collection, the best investment handbags to buy, and the latest and the greatest. Now those are all very useful information, but it can also be a bit distracting, especially for those of you who only really want a small collection. After learning about minimalism, I sometimes ask myself if I would buy designer items again if I had to start from zero. And I decided the answer is yes. And here is how I would start a luxury collection in a fairly minimalist and practical way. Designer handbags were the first category I bought when I first started designer shopping. And I think I would do it again if I had to start from zero. That said, I think my collection would look smaller than it is today, and the selection might also look different. For example, I don't think I'll buy a Chanel Classic flap at its current pricing, which is about $10,000. With that kind of money, I probably would explore the other designer brands such as Toteme, Loewe, and so on. When I first started, I definitely put a lot of focus on resale value, and to be honest, it has worked in my favor in certain cases, especially when I decided to downsize. However, my decluttering experience has also reframed my perspectives. I now look at my designer handbags with more sense of practicality rather than fantasy. I would rather own something that I would use and therefore not have to sell, rather than buying something with a very promising resale value, hoping that I would make it work someday. I hope that makes sense. I would also purchase something that's very usable in my everyday life, rather than something that I worship so much that I feel like it should be reserved for a very special occasion. My first designer handbag was the Louis Vuitton Speedy Bandolier 25, which is an absolute workhorse. It's so durable and wearable, and I never feel like I have to baby the bag. Whereas the Chanel Classic flap was like the unicorn bag. It was almost a bit too precious to use. Now, even though the Chanel Classic flap has gone up in price by a lot, the Louis Vuitton is actually a much better value handbag in terms of usability. Something else I would do differently is that I would spread my resources across different categories instead of heavily focusing on just luxury handbags. I actually went through a lot of buying and selling luxury handbags before finally exploring the jewelry section. So if I lost everything today, I most certainly would use some of my resources to buy some sparkles early. Similar to designer handbags, I would go for something that I can wear every day. This means very simple and dainty pieces that are also sparkly and versatile. I used to think it was pointless wearing accessory unless if it was a very prominent statement piece, such as my chunky Hermes leather bracelets. Whereas now, I really value the more subtle elements, such as my everyday diamond necklace. So even though I still really enjoy my Hermes leather bracelets, they wouldn't be the first thing I would buy. I now prefer to travel light, and depending on where I go, I sometimes don't bring a luxury handbag with me, but I always make sure to take some small jewelry pieces. First of all, because they are such tiny elements, I can always have them on me. I don't have to check them in and therefore worry about them going missing. Usually, I only pack what I will wear the entire trip, but if I decide to bring a small collection, I'll make sure everything fits nicely inside a small travel case. For me, having a bit of sparkles just makes everything feel more complete, even if all I wear is t-shirts and shorts. So if I had to start from scratch, I would definitely invest in this department. I also want to touch on the financial aspect because luxury items are inherently expensive, and I also think this topic deserves more mention than it does. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong buying things that we love, but the approach matters. Years ago, I came across a video where the blogger said she worked a few summer jobs and with that money she bought a Prada cosmetic bag. I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. Working hard for something that you really want. But now I don't feel exactly the same anymore. I think how we make a purchase can really affect the level of enjoyment we have for the item. If you really stretch your budget to buy a designer handbag, you might feel guilty about the purchase. And a month later, when the credit card bill arrives, you might even resent the handbag. On the other hand, buying a Louis Vuitton handbag when you are financially able and comfortable is a much more pleasant experience. I also think it's really important to not let luxury price increases pressurize us into buying something if the timing doesn't make sense for us. For example, if you are trying to set up a business, you need resources and capital, and therefore saving $1,000 on a Chanel handbag is irrelevant. It's actually much better to pay more for the Chanel handbag when your business is up and running. I think it also really helps to focus on the bigger picture when it comes to luxury shopping. You see, the novelty of designer shopping can feel both fascinating and addictive. It might be the very attentive customer service or the beautiful packaging. Whatever it is, if you're not careful, you might find yourself buying more and more without realizing why you're doing it. This is when you buy a new Chanel handbag every season, even though you already have 10 Chanel handbags in your collection and you never really use them. I find it incredibly important to stay grounded when building a luxury collection. I suggest asking yourself very practical questions. For example, what kind of wardrobe do you want to have? How do you want your collection to serve you? And what do you value? For me, I always appreciate the element of mobility. We don't have any plan to relocate, but I do love traveling. And it feels freeing to not tie myself down to a huge collection of expensive things. That said, I don't want to live on a bare minimum either. So for me, it's about finding the right balance in between. Years ago, I already decided my goal is to have a curated collection that allows variety, but I want to keep it a manageable size just so if I ever plan a big move, it wouldn't be too overwhelming to adjust my possessions. With that in mind, I don't get distracted as easily anymore. So even if Chanel increased their prices 5 times a year, I'm simply not interested in buying a Chanel classic flap as an investment. And I'm certainly not spending my holiday going to the flagship Hermes store in Paris hoping to score a Birkin. I'm really happy with what I have, so I'd rather spend the day exploring the city. I want to touch on the more affordable contemporary luxury brands such as Pauline, Cuyana, Atelier's August, and so on because I do get this question a lot. Now, when I first started buying designer handbags, I kind of limited my options to Dior, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and other mainstream designer brands. I guess part of me just wanted to keep to the so-called safe options. Whereas now, I think contemporary brands are worth exploring as well. Again, the premise here is to buy what you will use. As someone who mixes designer brands with high street pieces, I truly believe when something is expensive, we're more precious about it. Putting a scratch on a Zara bag is not pleasant, but it's not as painful as scratching your Birkin. Let me know if you agree with this. But I feel like at a certain price point, we might even start worrying about the item rather than simply enjoying it. Years ago, I had a Mulberry Lily bag. It was by no means a cheap bag. I believe it was about £400 at that point. But compared to my Chanel classic flap, I thought it was a bargain, and because of that, I didn't feel like I had to baby it as much. Now, I bought most of my luxury handbags years ago, and it was a different time back then. I mean, the Chanel classic flap has gone up by 3 times, and a Louis Vuitton canvas bag is easily over $2,000. My mindset is to use what I already have, but if I had to start from zero, I'll certainly consider the more affordable range as well. The truth is, there are now many amazing brands out there with lovely designs, amazing quality, and very reasonable pricing. A fantastic example is this bag from Atelier's August. It costs about £390, which is quite a lot lower than a mainstream designer bag, especially when it's also handmade. This is an absolutely beautiful piece. I've done a review about this bag if you're interested. So I mentioned about packing light. I'm on a mini retirement from my professional job at the moment, and I'm really hoping to travel more. Every time I come back from a trip, I like to do a quick audit about my packing inventory. So I'll ask myself questions like, what should I have packed more? What did I use the most during the trip? And what did I really miss having? I think time away from our familiar setting can be the perfect opportunity to think about how we would actually start from zero. So if you're going away soon, I highly recommend taking some time to do some reflection. Down below, please let me know how you would start your collection from zero. What would you buy first? And do you think your collection would look smaller than it is right now? That's it from me today. Take care and I will see you soon.